Hey guys, Kyle the Death Knight of Anime here, bringing you my review for My Hero Academia chapter 215. And okay, so first off, for a lot of you who saw my last chapter review and the issue I brought up with Izuku having control over the Black Whip quirk, in this chapter, it was almost immediately addressed here in this chapter, which I liked. Like a lot of the problems I had with Izuku being able to control Black Whip in the last chapter, it was addressed here, and it was addressed in the exact way I thought it would go, which is basically that which is basically which is basically that Izuku can well, all it seems to be a situation that while Izuku can more freely tap into the powers that are reserved in One For All's core, or at the very least, or just Black Whip in this case, controlling it is an entirely different matter. So I'm at least glad that from so it was, I guess, in a way it was kind of one of those things that was easily predictable of what Horikoshi would do at this point, but if you know the man. But I'm glad that Horikoshi is at least is keeping up with that whole idea of learning to control your power. So yeah, with that he did manage he managed to make it work for me, like, which again, yeah, I'm glad that Izuku is still gonna have to learn in order to control it for sure. Um, Also, one thing I'm really glad to see is immediately after his attempt to control Black Whip failed, Izuku pretty much switched back in order to using the base power of One For All, and it's one of those things where I never believed that Horikoshi would basically would basically forget about pretty much about what made the quirk of One For All popular to begin with, but I did have this fear that the core power of One For All would basically end up getting overshadowed after the reveal of all these quirks being stored inside One For All's core. But it does, just from this chapter alone, it does seem like Horikoshi is does still plan to keep it does still plan to keep it a little evenly balanced out by having Izuku pretty much switch between using the other powers when in a situation that requires them, and then One For All itself for I want to assume a lot of the majority of the combat that he's going to end up being involved in. Like I think what Izuku is going to be doing is he's going to use a lot of those other powers as kind of almost as a little bit of a as a little bit of kind of a bit of an aid in combat almost, but he's not going to use them as like his main powers almost, which again I like, because it's still going to put the core power of One For All in the forefront. So yeah. Um, Now, one thing I really appreciate about this chapter is how much is how much of Ochiko we basically got in this chapter, and just like, okay, to start off with, one thing I really appreciated about this chapter is how much that simple exchange between Ochiko and Monoma managed to get so much across with very little, and how without even barely needing to say a word outside of her initial assessment of Monoma's quirk, we pretty much got to see a lot of just how prepared Ochiko was in order to deal with Monoma through just the simplicity of like facial expressions and hand motions, like just in the simple thing of her holding up holding up, not saying a word, and holding up just a couple fingers in order to predict in order to predict a lot about Monoma's quirk. It was like, yeah, like I was getting into that shit, because it's just so simple, and yet it's visual storytelling, which is so simple, and yet just extremely effective in that respect for me. And so yeah, I just loved that little moment of it for sure. But even going outside of that one moment, Ochako, in a lot of ways, Ochako is the one who, once again, she was the one who pretty much ended up stealing a lot of ended up seeing a lot of the show in this chapter, because even after dealing with Monoma, she pretty much she raced back to the battlefield, and went all in from there, by basically knocking out Reiko and capturing code I, without, and the best part and honestly the best thing about what made Ochiko's whole about what made when Ochaco such pretty much such an amazing character to watch in this chapter, amazing to read about in this chapter, is that if you really look at this chapter, Ochako pretty much did all of this, everything Ochako did in this chapter. She pretty much did all of that without even using her quirk. That's the amazing part of this. She managed to capture it was Reiko and basically Kodai without even using her own quirk. She pretty much used her base combat skills and even used I guess it was the sticky balls, the sticky balls in order to capture them. So it's like, yeah, Ochako for the win with this chapter. That's all I gotta say. Yeah. Although again, going back to Monoma, I gotta give Monoma his props too, because again, he knew he wasn't the most powerful hero, so he set things up ahead of time where even if he was captured, he could still provide aid in some way. And I really should have. And the thing about Monoma, and not even in just this chapter, but pretty much throughout all of this little exercise so far, looking at Monoma now, it really has made me realize exactly how ignorant I pretty much was in order to how much of a brilliant tactician that he actually is. Like he actually is, has always been, and especially was in the sports festival arc. Like a lot of this stuff we've gotten with Monoma in this in this particular in this particular arc has really just brought a lot about the character to the forefront for me. And I mean, I guess I'll give I guess Horikoshi he wanted to hide a lot of that, pretty much behind how much of a smug character Monoma was, but how much of a smug and cocky character Monoma was. But yeah, I'm definitely starting to. I see the brilliance now. I see the brilliance of the character now for sure. Now, if I did have an issue with this chapter, and it is a minor one, is that I wanted to see more of the fight between Shinzo and Izuku in this chapter, and I'm hoping that there still is more, because the really weird thing about this chapter for me is that even though the tagline at the end of the chapter has proclaimed victory for pretty much I guess Class A, somehow I'm still not entirely bought on the idea that the battle between Shinzo and Izuku is over just yet. It feels like that there is still a little bit more left in their fight, even taking into account the obvious factor of Izuku basically being a lot stronger on the physical level to Shinzo. But yeah, it just feels unresolved, or maybe my expectations were too high, or maybe it's also one of those things where until pretty much a character is in jail, I don't entirely or maybe it's just that I've gained this mentality that until I actually see a character being in jail, I'm not entirely convinced that basically the battle is over with them. So yeah, I guess it's that. I guess it's that too. But yeah, I guess part of me is kind of hoping that with the Shinzo and Izuku fight, that there's still a little more waiting for us. Now, but having said that, if this is the end of the fight, then I'd say that for basically as quick as it was, we definitely, it was pretty good. And honestly, I think the one thing I picked up on about this fight, almost the fight between Shinzo and Izuku in this chapter, for as little as we got, is that if Monoma's twin impact worked in the way he wanted it to, then I think that Shinzo would have had more of a chance in order to take Izuku out. And I know there are going to be a couple people who call a little bit of the friendship BS on the ending, but really it came down to the simple fact that Izuku managed to survive that basically remote assault, because if and all because of the training he endured in order to make himself the vessel for pretty much one for all. So yeah, it's one of those things where if Izuku hadn't had all the previous training that he has, I don't think he would have survived that. I don't think he would have survived it was that remote punch or something like that. But yeah, so yeah, I gotta give props to Izuku for. So yeah, I gotta give props to a lot of the fight that we did get for sure. But yeah, guys, that's my review. If you enjoyed the video, like, comment, subscribe, follow me on Twitter, Facebook, and you list to Crunchyroll. Death Knight of Anime, signing off. Later, guys.